Hollywood shockwaves. Megan Fox, Zendaya, Sydney Sweeney, Jenna Ortega, and Olivia Cooke married to the same man? 5 A-list actresses, 1 husband. Who is this mystery man? Screamed the TMZ headline.
The identity of the starlet's husband revealed, no Hollywood connections, works in food service, barely 20, orphaned, former diner waiter, reported People magazine.
Psychic claims Megan Fox and company might be under a spell. Blared a supermarket tabloid.
Megan Fox scrolled through her phone, her stunningly beautiful face a mask of despair. Twitter, Instagram, the front pages of every major entertainment site, they were all plastered with news about them.
I'm seriously about to lose it.
Sydney Sweeney, also glued to her phone, groaned, tossing it onto the coffee table. She hugged her knees, burying her gorgeous face between her slender, pale legs.
Jenna Ortega sighed, resting her chin on her hand.
I don't know if you're losing it, Sid, but my mom definitely is. She just chewed me out on the phone for a solid hour.
Olivia Cooke turned to Zendaya, exasperated.
This is all your fault. Zendaya, looking both wronged and misunderstood, protested, I just suggested we have a few drinks.
How was I to know you guys would go that hard? The 5 young women sat glumly.
Even the brilliant June California sunshine streaming into the Beverly Hills mansion couldn't dispel the dark cloud hanging over them. The whole mess started with their lunch date yesterday. The 5 actresses, all around the same age, had known each other since their early days in the industry and were incredibly close.
Yesterday, all 5 happened to be in Los Angeles taking a rare break. A quick group text later, they decided to meet for lunch at a trendy West Hollywood spot. Publicly, they were paragons of beauty and grace, A-list celebrities exuding cool confidence. Privately, they were just like any other group of friends, loud, giggly, and prone to playful bickering. Caught up in the fun and feeling relaxed, Zendaya had suggested they order some top-shelf tequila. Ordinarily, this wouldn't be a big deal. They were all adults, friends getting together for a few drinks was perfectly normal. The mistake was that none of them were big drinkers, and they'd foolishly decided to order several rounds of expensive añejo, downing shots like they were chasing beer. The result, unsurprisingly, was that all 5 got completely hammered. Alcohol, as it's known to do, can make people do crazy things, and even glittering movie stars aren't immune. The 5 intoxicated women made an absolutely insane decision. Initially, they joked about becoming blood sisters, maybe even getting matching tattoos. But then, someone slurred out that a sisterhood pact wasn't strong enough. Once they all got married and had their own families, their priorities would shift, and their bond might fade. So, instead of a sisterhood pact, why not find one man and all marry him? That way, they could truly be sisters for life. And then, the 5 drunk women actually did it. They roped in the young waiter who brought their last round of food, dragged him back to one of their places to grab their IDs, and then somehow convinced him to go with them to City Hall. Before the utterly bewildered eyes of the county clerk, they had all legally married the waiter. And then, Hollywood, the media, and the entire internet exploded. American law, in this particular parallel version of reality they apparently lived in, did technically allow for polygamous marriage, though in modern times, such situations were exceedingly rare. Let alone 5 young, A-list actresses at the height of their fame, all marrying the same man. To call it earth-shattering news was an understatement. So, what do we do now?
Megan Fox said, crossing her long, toned legs and rubbing her temples.
I talked to my agent. Polygamous marriage is different from a standard one.
You can get a regular divorce anytime, but with this, we have to be married for a full year before we can file.
Sydney Sweeney chimed in, so we just wait a year, then divorce the guy.
Worst case, we all just take on a bunch of out-of-town film projects for the next 12 months. Anyway, we already put out that statement saying it was all a misunderstanding, not a real marriage.
Olivia Cooke countered, it's not that simple.
We're legally married to him now. If he gets into trouble or something happens to him, we're all legally responsible.
Zendaya blinked her large eyes. Like what? Olivia shot Zendaya a glare. Like, if he racks up $1 million gambling debt, we have to help pay it. Or, since he doesn't have a steady income right now, we have to support him financially. Oh. Megan added, and that's not all. Because of his connection to us, he's now prime tabloid bait.
Imagine if the paparazzi set him up, trick him into saying something he shouldn't.
Even if we issue a denial, it'll all reflect badly on us. Zendaya flopped dramatically onto the sofa. Talk about a butterfly effect. Who knew one lunch could cause this much trouble? Jenna Ortega said, "It looks like the first thing we need to do is get him under control. Once he's stable, things will be easier to manage. In a year, we'll be free." Megan nodded, sitting up straighter. "Right.
We need to talk to our dear husband.
Does anyone have his contact info?"
The other four looked at each other. The room fell silent, and then a collective look of dawning, awkward realization spread across their faces. It seemed they'd completely lost track of their brand new husband. It was past 5 in the afternoon by the time the 5 actresses, through the City Hall records, managed to contact their husband. They arranged to meet him at Meghan's mansion. This particular mansion was a recent purchase for Meghan, located in a newly developed, ultra-exclusive gated community in Beverly Hills. The average price per square foot was astronomical. It was the definition of luxury living. At 7 that evening, the husband of the 5 actresses arrived at the community gates in a taxi. Security in the enclave was ironclad, taxis were absolutely not permitted inside. Ethan Miller had no choice but to get out at the main gate and walk. Dusk had settled, and the June evening breeze was pleasant. It was no wonder this was prime real estate. The environment and air quality were a world away from the bustling city center. Ethan, backpack slung over his shoulder, strolled casually along the paved road within the community. He felt remarkably calm about the impending meeting with his 5 superstar wives. After all, he'd already experienced transmigration. Other things seemed relatively minor in comparison. This had to be a parallel world, roughly similar to Ethan's previous life. The major historical timelines hadn't changed much, just a few aspects were different.
For example, in this world, the United States permitted polygamy. For example, this world lacked the familiar entertainment works from his past life. For example, in this world, America was still the world's largest economy, but by an even wider margin. But to Ethan, these details weren't particularly important. Having already died once, Ethan's mindset was incredibly serene. In his previous life, Ethan wouldn't be considered a success. Though he was the first in his village to attend a prestigious university, though he'd built a significant business from scratch, when he lay on his deathbed with terminal cancer, he still felt he hadn't truly succeeded. He'd spent his whole life chasing money, chasing fame, so much so that he hadn't even returned home for his parents' funerals, missing his last chance to see them. Friends and relatives had long since drifted away. His phone contacts were mostly business associates. In that moment, Ethan had summed up his life as a failure. In pursuit of so-called success, he had lost too much. For so-called life goals, he had neglected to appreciate the scenery along the way, leaving him without even a few cherished memories. It could be said that Ethan passed away with deep regrets. In fact, lying on his sickbed, he had fantasized about what he would do if he had a next life. But those were just fantasies. He never dared hope they would come true. But who would have thought he would actually transmigrate? Ethan still felt this was a blessing from a higher power, and he cherished this opportunity from the bottom of his heart. This time, he wanted to live earnestly, to fully enjoy life. Mansion number 6. Ethan rang the doorbell. Megan Fox opened the door. Their eyes met. She nodded, offering a polite but visibly strained smile, and invited Ethan in. On the sofa in the first-floor living room sat the other 4 women. Ethan and Megan also sat down, Megan and the other 4 in a row, with Ethan on a chair opposite them. It looked rather like a public interrogation. Ethan felt no awkwardness or tension, only a sense of amusement. His gaze openly admired the 5 great beauties, the A-list stars before him. He wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but he felt these 5 women were even more beautiful than their counterparts in his previous life. Each was a national treasure, skin whiter than snow, figures curvaceous and alluring. Ahem. The 6 of them sat in silence for a moment. The 5 women exchanged glances, then Megan, clenching a small, fair hand near her mouth, coughed lightly and said, "Ethan, we need to talk to you." Ethan nodded. "Go ahead." Megan said, "You probably understand what happened between us." It was just a misunderstanding. We drank too much and did something ridiculous. We don't have any feelings for each other, in fact, we don't even know you. So, we plan to divorce you in a year. Ethan continued to nod. Okay.
Megan's mouth opened and then closed again, a slightly dazed look on her face.
The other four weren't much different.
They had anticipated Ethan refusing, making a scene, or making some outrageous demands. In fact, before Ethan arrived, they had discussed it.
If Ethan's demands weren't too excessive, they would try to meet them. But who would have thought he would agree so readily? It even left them feeling a little deflated, questioning their own allure. Since you've agreed, then that's settled.
We have one small request, which is that during this year, you don't speak carelessly to the media, try not to cause any trouble, and preferably, don't leave our site.
Megan then waved her hand. It's not that we don't trust you, it's just, you know our status. The media is currently targeting us, and they will definitely try every means to get information from you. Ethan frowned. Divorce was fine, but not being able to leave their site? Wasn't that restricting his personal freedom? Don't worry, we'll compensate you, Jenna Ortega interjected. We'll give you $10,000 a month for living expenses, and after the divorce, we'll give you another $500,000. Ethan smiled and nodded. With money, it wasn't a problem.
Although he had decided not to focus solely on money, not to risk his life for it anymore.
But money still had to be earned.
Money itself wasn't at fault, naturally, the more, the better. After all, money determined the material foundation of life.
He would need money to marry and have children in the future. As long as he wasn't too obsessed, too fixated, it was fine.
He considered himself to be working for the 5 actresses, earning $620,000 a year, relatively speaking.
This salary wasn't low.
The 5 women then produced an agreement, the main content being what they had just discussed with Ethan.
The 5 women would pay Ethan's living expenses, and Ethan agreed to divorce them after 1 year. Ethan readily signed his name.
The agreement was made in 6 copies, Ethan and each of the 5 women kept one.
After signing the agreement, the 5 women unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief.
Previously, they had been very worried, afraid Ethan wouldn't cooperate, afraid he would make excessive demands. Unexpectedly, Ethan was so easy to talk to, which relieved them and significantly improved their impression of him.
From now on, you can stay here. We'll be staying here too. For this year at least, we're a family.
I hope we can all get along happily, Megan said to Ethan with a smile.
Ethan nodded. That works out.
My lease on my old apartment just ended, and I was planning to find a new place anyway.
Megan led Ethan to a room on the first floor.
The room was very large, about 400 square feet, fully furnished with electronics, and had a private bathroom.
The conditions were infinitely better than Ethan's old rented room.
After putting his few sets of clothes from his backpack into the closet, Ethan took his personal items into the bathroom to shower. When he came out, the 5 women were not in the first-floor living room.
Ethan went up to the second floor, stopping on the stairs, and asked, "Excuse me, can I use the kitchen?" Megan's head popped out from a bedroom.
"Of course, feel free to use anything in the house.
No need to be so formal. Are you planning to cook?" Ethan said, "Yes, I haven't eaten dinner yet." "Would you ladies like some?" Megan shook her head. "No thanks, we've already eaten."
"Oh, if it's too much trouble, I can order takeout for you."
"It's okay, I can manage." Ethan went downstairs and into the kitchen to prepare a meal.
Upstairs, the 5 women quietly emerged from their bedrooms, lining up along the second-floor railing, collectively watching Ethan in the kitchen.
"I think this guy isn't too bad," Zendaya said, leaning against the railing, her shapely rear jutting out, her beautiful face resting on the back of her hand.
Olivia Cook chuckled.
"Fallen for him already?
Then you don't have to divorce him in a year."
"In your dreams. I just think he seems like a decent person. There are plenty of good people, does that mean I have to marry all of them? Do you guys think he might be doing this on purpose?" Jenna Ortega suddenly spoke up. Megan glanced at Jenna. "You mean he's playing hard to get?" Jenna nodded. "Deliberately acting so agreeable to win us over." I'm not being arrogant, but objectively speaking, we're considered beautiful, right? How could an ordinary man react so calmly? Sydney Sweeney said, then there are three possibilities. First, he really is playing hard to get. Second, he's gay. Third, maybe he really is a good person and just isn't interested in us. Megan shrugged. I don't care what kind of person he is. As long as he doesn't cause trouble and we can get through this year smoothly and resolve this matter, that's all that matters. Ethan didn't hear the conversation of the 5 women upstairs. In fact, even if he had, he wouldn't have taken it to heart. Currently, something more important, more interesting, was capturing his attention. Ding! Skill book Easy Home Cooking detected. Learn? Ethan, holding a cookbook, stood dumbfounded in front of the stove. He had casually picked up the cookbook from a nearby stack of a dozen or so, probably bought by Megan to learn cooking. He had just idly flipped through one when a voice suddenly sounded in his head. A system? As someone who had transmigrated and experienced life and death, Ethan wasn't overly alarmed, just a little surprised, then intrigued. Learn! Ethan thought silently. Sure enough, the voice in his head sounded again. Ding! Learn skill book Easy Home Cooking, acquired skill, cooking. A transparent screen then appeared before Ethan's eyes, presumably the system panel. Almighty system host, Ethan Miller skills, cooking, beginner, 0 out of 10. You are now a third-rate cook, capable of making common everyday dishes. The system panel was very simple, with only one skill category, and only one skill, cooking. Ethan knew how to cook, but only barely. In both his past and current life, he had no aptitude for cooking. The food he made was edible at best, far from delicious. But now, even though the system described him as only a third-rate cook, the feeling was completely different. His mind was filled with new memories and experiences related to cooking, and the kitchen felt very familiar. Ethan took a moment to absorb it, then looked at the stack of cookbooks beside him. Could any book in front of him turn into a skill book? Ethan reached out and picked up another book. The system didn't disappoint, the prompt sounded immediately. Ding! Skill book for seasons of home cooking detected. Learn? Learn! Ding! Learn skill book for seasons of home cooking, gained 19 experience points. Ethan opened the system panel. Almighty system. Host, Ethan Miller skills, cooking, intermediate, 9/50ths. You are now a second-rate cook, your skills recognized by a portion of the public. The cooking skill leveled up to intermediate. Ethan once again felt the previous sensation, the experience and memories in his mind became richer and more fluid. He picked up another book, this time The Essence of Southern Cuisine. Perhaps because its genre was different from the previous two, he received more experience this time, 39 points. Ding! Learn skill book Mastering Soups and Stews, gained 42 experience points. Ding! Learn skill book The Art of Grilling, gained 40 experience points. Ding! Learn skill book 1001 Gourmet Californian Dishes, gained 49 experience points. Ding! Learn skill book Nourishing Meals for Every Season, gained 48 experience points. Ding! Learn skill book Easy Appetizers. One by one, books were picked up, and Ethan continuously learned. After learning all 12 cookbooks, his cooking skill had reached peak level. Cooking, peak, 23 out of 200. You are now a top-tier chef, your culinary skills sought after and praised by all. Ethan closed his eyes, standing quietly before the stove, digesting the memories and experiences in his mind. At this moment, the kitchen no longer felt alien to him, only deep familiarity and affection. Previously, cooking might have been a chore for Ethan, as it is for most people. But for the current Ethan, cooking seemed to have become an enjoyment, a hobby. This was a love born from the depths of his heart. More than 10 minutes later, Ethan opened his eyes, rinsed rice, and started the rice cooker. He then took out 2 tomatoes, 3 eggs, a cucumber, some wood ear mushrooms, and carrots from the refrigerator. He blanched the tomatoes in hot water to peel them, then placed them on the cutting board and began to chop, chop chop chop. The rapid, continuous sound of the knife, each piece of tomato perfectly uniform in size.
The cleaver in Ethan's hand danced as if alive, glinting coldly under the light, yet without a trace of menace, instead exuding a sense of ease and grace.
Second floor.
The 5 women were still leaning against the railing. A moment ago, they were discussing why Ethan had suddenly zoned out.
They guessed he might have seen them, deliberately acting to attract their attention. They chattered for a while.
But now, all were silent, each blinking their large eyes, staring at Ethan without blinking, as if he weren't chopping vegetables, but performing an art form. Any skill, when honed to a certain level, creates a sense of beauty. An ordinary person driving is nothing special, but a drift racer can be a dazzling spectacle. An ordinary person playing with a yo-yo is boring and childish, but in the hands of a world champion, a yo-yo can perform incredibly cool and impressive tricks. Cooking is the same. When the skill reaches a certain level, it becomes equally beautiful to watch. At this moment, in the eyes of the 5 women, Ethan had transformed cooking into a circus performance, skillful, fluid, and natural, like flowing water in drifting clouds.
Time passed quietly.
When Ethan placed the rice, scrambled eggs with tomatoes, and stir-fried pork with wood-ear mushrooms on the dining table, the 5 women upstairs finally snapped back to reality.
Zendaya was the most sensitive to the smell of food.
She twitched her elegant nose, unconsciously licking her lips, and said, "Smells amazing." Megan also unconsciously swallowed, but she didn't want to be lumped in with a foodie like Zendaya, so she said dismissively, "You ate the most tonight, don't tell me you're hungry again." Zendaya shook her head, her big eyes fixed on the food on the table, and said honestly, "Not hungry, just craving it."
Sydney Sweeney instigated, "Then go down and eat with Ethan. Anyway, there are 2 dishes, he can't finish it all by himself."
Zendaya was tempted but still shook her head.
That wouldn't be right.
Sigh, I should have agreed when he asked earlier. In the dining area, Ethan had already started eating.
He had a good appetite, though he wasn't a snacker. Snackers love to eat, their mouths never idle, but they don't necessarily eat a lot.
He, on the other hand, simply had a large capacity. Perhaps because his family was poor when he was young in his previous life, even after he started working and his financial situation improved, his appetite remained substantial. Now, eating the 2 simple home-cooked dishes he made himself, he nodded inwardly.
Peak-level cooking was indeed no simple feat, even better than what chefs at high-end restaurants could produce.
After finishing a bowl of rice, Ethan stood up to get more when he accidentally knocked over the soy sauce bottle, staining one side of his pants. Ethan sighed helplessly, cleaned up briefly, then went into the bathroom to wash up and change his pants. Upstairs. Seeing Ethan go back to his room, Zendaya's eyes immediately lit up.
She looked around and said, "He's gone to his room. Let's go down and eat."
Megan crossed her arms, a haughty expression on her face.
"Not going. I can't lose face with you. What about you guys?" Zendaya looked at Jenna Ortega and the other 2.
"Let's go together." The 3 women thought for a moment, then decisively nodded. The 4 women, Zendaya, Jenna Ortega, Sydney Sweeney, and Olivia Cook, tiptoed downstairs like 4 delicate, white mice, found bowls and chopsticks, sat at the dining table, and began to feast.
As they ate, they repeatedly praised Ethan's cooking skills.
They truly hadn't expected Ethan to have this talent. It was delicious, not just fragrant but also incredibly tasty. Best of all, the food was visually appealing, like something out of a TV commercial, the kind created with special effects, making you drool just by looking at it. Soon, each of the 4 women had finished a bowl of rice.
Zendaya patted her flat little stomach, seemingly still a bit unsatisfied. Same old story, not hungry, just craving. If she weren't afraid of gaining weight from eating too much, she really wanted another bowl. In her words, this meal gave her mom's cooking vibes. The dishes were very ordinary, but they were very appetizing and comforting to eat. The 4 women washed their used bowls and chopsticks and went upstairs, satisfied. Zendaya said to Megan, who was still leaning against the railing, "Are you really not eating? There's still some left." Megan turned back towards her room. "Not eating."
Zendaya shrugged and, along with the other 3, returned to her own bedroom. As soon as the 4 women closed their doors, Megan snuck out, glanced around, then quietly went downstairs.
To maintain her figure, she usually ate very little for dinner, sometimes nothing at all.
Today, she had only had a bowl of congee and a small vegetable salad, which naturally wasn't enough to fill her up. If it hadn't been for Ethan's cooking display, she would have managed to endure it. But cruelly, Ethan had made such a fragrant meal, and Zendaya and the other three had eaten with such relish, making her hungrier and hungrier.
Saying she wouldn't eat earlier was just to save face. Now that the four had gone to their rooms, she snuck down to eat secretly.
Serving herself rice, with just one bite, Megan felt incredibly satisfied. Late at night, stomach growling, eating such delicious rice was truly blissful. Megan continuously picked at the food, her small mouth eating quickly. As she was engrossed in eating, she suddenly felt the light in front of her dim.
Megan looked up to see Ethan standing in front of her, watching her.
Ethan first glanced at the several empty plates, then at the nearly empty rice cooker, and finally, his gaze returned to Megan.
Megan's chopsticks, holding a piece of food, paused mid-air. For a moment, she wanted to die. Nothing could be more embarrassing. Does he think I ate all of this by myself? He probably thinks I'm a pig. If I said it wasn't just me who ate, would you believe me?
Megan blushed, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan chuckled, comforting her, it's really no big deal. Megan looked utterly dejected, her head dropping straight onto the dining table.
Put. Ha 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 ha. Loud laughter suddenly erupted from upstairs.
Megan and Ethan turned to look, only to see Zendaya and the other three girls bent over in hysterics at the top of the stairs.
Megan shot the four of them an angry glare, then seemed to come to a realization.
Since she'd already lost face, she might as well eat her fill first.
Megan finished all the food. Ethan cleared the dishes and took them to the sink to wash. Megan didn't like to eat and run, she stood beside Ethan, helping out. Where did you learn to cook? Your skills feel really good, even better than restaurant food.
Megan tilted her head, looking at Ethan curiously.
Ethan smiled. I didn't study it professionally. It's more of a hobby. Megan nodded, wanting to say more.
If the two of them stayed together without talking, it would indeed be a bit awkward.
But she didn't know Ethan well.
Her lips moved, but ultimately, she couldn't find the words. After washing the dishes, Megan wished Ethan good night and prepared to go upstairs.
Ethan called her back. Do you have any books in the house? Books? What kind of books? Ethan said, any kind will do. Megan said, I have some skincare and beauty books in my room. Do you want to see them? Ethan nodded. Sure. Megan's expression was a bit strange, but she didn't overthink it and led Ethan to her bedroom.
Megan's bedroom was even larger, about 600 or 700 square feet, with a warm color scheme. The floor was covered with a brown carpet, and on the wall behind the large pink bed was a massive portrait of herself. Near the window on the right was a scenic-style bookshelf, filled with books. Ethan glanced over, they were all skincare and beauty books.
Can I take them back to my room to read? Ethan asked Megan. Huh? Sure.
Under Megan's puzzled gaze, Ethan gathered the 20-odd books from the shelf into his arms and went downstairs. Not long after Ethan left, Zendaya and the other three girls piled into Megan's room, each one buzzing with excitement, the word gossip practically written on their foreheads.
Jenna Ortega asked, what were you two doing just now? Megan said irritably, what do you think could happen in such a short time? He borrowed my books. Borrowed books?
Megan gestured with her chin towards the bookshelf.
Didn't I buy a whole bunch of skincare and beauty books? He took them all.
Olivia Cook said, puzzled, he's a guy.
What's he doing reading skincare and beauty books? Megan shrugged. How would I know?
Zendaya crossed her arms, her delicate, fair hand stroking her chin. Her long, slender legs paced back and forth in the room, her beautiful face pensive, like a famous detective solving a case online.
I sense something fishy, extremely fishy. Have you guys noticed? Our husband is a deep one. Isn't deep usually used to describe women? Jenna Ortega interjected blankly.
As soon as she finished speaking, 8 sharp glares shot towards her.
Olivia Cook frowned, lightly tapping Jenna's forehead. Big sister, what on earth are you thinking? Watched too many adult films?
Jenna's face turned bright red, and with a thump, she flopped face down on the bed, playing dead.
Sydney Sweeney continued, but seriously, I also feel Ethan is a bit strange. I always feel like he's not what I imagined. Megan and Olivia exchanged glances. They had a similar feeling, that Ethan's actions were always unpredictable. Another rather obvious point was, he was too calm. A man who suddenly married 5 superstar wives, could he really be so calm? It wasn't that they were arrogant, they had that much confidence in their appeal. But Ethan appeared very calm, even when they proposed divorcing after a year. Added to that was his outstanding cooking, and his occasional strange behaviors, all pointing to his mysteriousness. Why overthink it? As long as he's not a bad person and divorces us after a year, that's all that matters. Megan stopped overthinking, then smacked Jenna's butt. You little devil, I'm going to bed. Downstairs. Ethan sat cross-legged on the bed, a pile of books borrowed from Megan in front of him. Ethan wanted to borrow Megan's books to test if his almighty system was truly almighty. Could it only acquire and upgrade the cooking skill, or could it acquire other types of skills? The truth proved his system was indeed almighty. The system prompt had sounded as soon as he touched these books. Ding! Skill book, the ultimate skincare guide detected. Learn? Learn. Ethan was a little curious. Cookbooks gave him the cooking skill, what skill would skincare and beauty books give him? Ding! Learn skill book, the ultimate skincare guide, gained beauty plus 19, figure plus 5, skin plus 17. Ethan looked somewhat astonished, stunned for a moment, then got out of bed and went into the bathroom. Standing before the mirror, Ethan carefully examined himself. There were indeed changes, not too obvious, but noticeable upon close inspection. His skin was a bit fairer, his facial features more symmetrical, and his eyelids, previously hooded, were now more defined. This was increasing beauty and figure? Ethan was very surprised. He hadn't expected this book to grant attribute points instead of a skill. A smile then spread across his face. Not ecstatic, but definitely happy. Although he didn't particularly expect or pursue his appearance, if there was a chance to become more handsome, with higher looks, he naturally hoped he could be better. Who doesn't love beauty? Ethan returned to the bed, picking up the books one by one, learning them. Ding! Learn skill book, Journey to Peak Beauty, gained beauty plus 21, figure plus 8, skin plus 7, hair quality plus 10. Ding! Learn skill book, The Beauty Queen's Makeover Secrets, gained beauty plus 19, figure plus 11, skin plus 10, hair quality plus 9. Ding! Learn skill book, Get Gorgeous with Nick, gained beauty plus 22, figure plus 12, skin plus 8, hair quality plus 8. Ding! Learn skill book, Beauty Queen. As his beauty, figure, and skin improved, Ethan's sensations became clearer. His facial skin tightened, slightly itchy, his body seemed to grow a bit taller, and his skin continuously firmed up. Additionally, Ethan had another feeling. As he continuously learned skill books, his mental energy began to deplete. By the time he learned the 10th book, he already felt very tired, very sleepy. He hadn't paid attention at the time, just thinking it was late and he was sleepy. But as he continued to learn, the fatigue in his body became more pronounced. When he finished learning the last book, his entire mind suddenly throbbed, then his vision went dark, and he passed out directly on the bed. In the final moment before his consciousness faded, Ethan finally understood, the system also had limits, he couldn't learn indefinitely. Learning skill books was actually consuming his mental energy, he could only learn a certain number of skill books each day. The next morning, Ethan didn't wake up until past 8. His head was still a little groggy, like a hangover. Getting out of bed, Ethan went into the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, and his spirits recovered. Looking up into the mirror, Ethan was stunned. The person in the mirror felt both familiar and strange. At first glance, he could still recognize his original appearance, but in reality, it was a world of difference. His facial features were sharply defined yet exquisitely symmetrical, his large eyes bright and soulful, with long eyebrows and a high, straight nose. Ethan's original looks weren't great, but not too bad either, barely considered good-looking. But now, he was truly a handsome man, his face so striking it looked meticulously photoshopped. The changes weren't just in his facial features, his figure and skin had also undergone noticeable transformations.
His height had gone from about 5'11" to around 6'1", with a lean waist, broad hips, and long legs, a perfect golden ratio.
Abs and V-lines had also appeared.
His skin had become fair and smooth, and any previous acne scars had completely vanished. It had to be said, the almighty system was truly powerful. This was almost a complete makeover. Overnight, from an ordinary ugly duckling, he had transformed into a white swan, and a particularly beautiful one at that.
Ethan was in a good mood.
He showered, changed clothes, hummed a tune, and left his bedroom.
First floor living room.
The 5 women, Megan and her crew, were sprawled messily on the sofa, their pale legs on display, each looking listless. Normally, they would have finished breakfast by this time. But after discovering last night that there was a super chef in the house, the 5 naturally didn't want to lift a finger themselves.
With gourmet food to enjoy, who would want to eat something perfunctory? When it came to cooking, all 5 of them combined couldn't match a fraction of Ethan's skill. So, after waking up early, they had been eagerly waiting here, only they hadn't expected Ethan to wake up so late. Oh my God, you're finally up.
Your wives are about to starve to death.
Ha!
Seeing Ethan emerge, Zendaya stood up to complain, but before she could finish, her beautiful face suddenly showed a look of astonishment.
The other 4 women followed Zendaya's gaze towards Ethan, and one by one, they also stood up in surprise.
The 5 women walked over to Ethan, their eyes filled with doubt and a hint of disbelief as they looked him up and down.
After a moment, Sydney Sweeney said, How did you suddenly get so handsome? Ethan shrugged. I've always been handsome. You just weren't paying attention to me, so you didn't notice. Ethan, of course, wouldn't tell anyone the truth. Besides, even if he did, others probably wouldn't believe him. The 5 women could only accept this explanation. What else could it be? Plastic surgery? One night wasn't enough time, and plastic surgery also required recovery time.
As for a girl changes dramatically by 18, that also needed a process, and besides, Ethan wasn't a woman.
What do you ladies want to eat? Ethan asked as he walked towards the kitchen. Congee. I want dumplings. Noodles. Scallion pancakes? I'm craving them. The 5 women chattered. Ethan helplessly turned back to them. Let's get a consensus. With so many dishes, it'll be lunchtime before I'm done. Then congee and scallion pancakes.
Ethan nodded, went into the kitchen, washed his hands first, then rinsed rice to make congee, took out a cutting board, and started kneading dough for scallion pancakes. Still the same neatness, still the same fluidity like flowing water and drifting clouds. Tasks that were incredibly troublesome in the eyes of the 5 women became extremely simple and proficient in Ethan's hands. The 5 women didn't go upstairs, but like little baby birds waiting to be fed, sat neatly at the dining table, chins resting on their hands, watching Ethan cook.
Was I the only one blind yesterday? How did I not notice he was so handsome yesterday? Jenna Ortega tilted her head slightly, sighing. Maybe we just didn't look closely, but he really is very handsome, Olivia Cook interjected. The 5 women were definitely seasoned. The entertainment industry was a place where handsome men and beautiful women were as common as mushrooms after rain. They had seen countless handsome men, but even so, Ethan at this moment still made them feel a certain fondness. Even in the entertainment industry, considering just looks and figure, Ethan was top tier. Breakfast was quickly prepared. Ethan and the 5 women sat around the dining table, enjoying a delicious breakfast. After breakfast, the 5 women sensibly went to wash the dishes. They were not the type to be self-righteous, nor did they have an arrogant demeanor or the habit of waiting for others to serve them. He had already cooked, they couldn't possibly let him wash the dishes too. After cleaning up the kitchen, Ethan and the 5 women went into the living room. Megan, crossing her pale, slender legs, sat on a single sofa, placed a bank card on the coffee table, pushed it towards Ethan, and said, "This is the bank card we're giving you. It has $10,000 in it. From now on, we'll transfer money to you at the beginning of each month." Ethan casually took the bank card and said thank you. Megan pondered for a moment, then said to Ethan, "Do you have any plans recently?" Ethan shook his head, saying no. Megan nodded. "We discussed it. Today, we all have to leave, everyone has work. We'd like you to accompany us, 1 month with each person. Is that okay?"
The five women still wanted to keep Ethan by their side, not because they couldn't bear to part with him, but because they were afraid Ethan would do something outrageous or say the wrong thing to the media.
Currently, they and Ethan were, after all, legally married. Even if there was a misunderstanding, in the eyes of others, they and Ethan were a family.
It could be said they shared honor and disgrace. And their worries were not unfounded. Celebrities are public figures, completely different from ordinary people. Under the media's microscope, even trivial matters can cause big trouble. Take smoking, for example. If an ordinary person smokes, at most they'll be told they lack awareness, or more seriously, fined a little money, and that's it. But if a celebrity smokes, it's a big deal, no longer a trivial matter, but news, widely reported by the media. In the eyes of the five women, Ethan was just an ordinary person. In a short time, it would be difficult for him to develop the necessary caution of a public figure. If they weren't around to watch him, he might really cause some trouble.
No problem, Ethan replied cheerfully. It was what you call getting paid to do a job.
Since he had taken money from the five women, he had to follow their arrangements.
As long as the arrangements were reasonable, he wouldn't object.
In fact, in his heart, he had clearly defined the relationship between himself and the five women as that of a temporary employer and employee.
Megan said, "Okay, then it's settled. This month, you can go with me and Zendaya first. We're currently filming on the same set."
After chatting in the living room for a while longer, Ethan and the five women returned to their rooms to pack their luggage. The life of a celebrity is undoubtedly very busy, and the more famous they are, the more so. This profession is indeed glamorous, but it's definitely not as easy as everyone imagines. In fact, this profession is much more stressful than others, both physically and mentally. Olivia Cook was the first to leave. She wore her hair in a topknot, a gray sleeveless top paired with a short skirt, and black high heels, striding out, showcasing her long, pale legs, sunglasses perched on her nose. At this moment, her aura was very strong, exuding the air of a major celebrity. She had to go to Atlanta for an event and would stay there for about a week.
Jenna Ortega and Sydney Sweeney left afterwards, one going to New Mexico, the other to the Pacific Northwest, both for filming. Ethan left last with Megan Fox and Zendaya.
Megan wore a light blue small vest, the lower half a matching pair of shorts, her pale, slender legs accentuated by red high heels. Zendaya was dressed more casually, ripped jeans, white flats, a white cartoon t-shirt on top, her long hair tied in a ponytail, swinging behind her as she walked. The three of them got into a commercial van, met up with their two female assistants downtown, and then headed straight for the high-speed train station. In the car, Megan introduced their assistants to Ethan.
Megan's assistant was named Linda Keller, slightly chubby, about Ethan's age. Zendaya's assistant was named Maya Pham, a year younger than Ethan.
The two female assistants were clearly very curious about Ethan, after all, he was nominally their boss's husband. But they were also very sensible and smart, not prying excessively, just politely greeting Ethan and then sitting quietly in the back without saying more.
Tickets had already been bought by the assistants.
After arriving at the high-speed train station and waiting a short while, the five of them boarded the train. They were all in the business class cabin, the five of them perfectly occupying one car. The business class cabin of the high-speed train was very luxurious and comfortable. One car only had 5 or 6 seats, with ample space. The seats were also extremely high-end, allowing one to sit or lie down, adjustable at will. Of course, the price was also high, even more expensive than flying.
No conversation throughout the journey. At 11 in the morning, the five arrived in Atlanta.
Exiting the high-speed train station, 2 nanny vans were already waiting by the roadside.
Megan and her assistant Linda Keller got into the front car, Zendaya and Maya Pham got into the back car.
Ethan hesitated for a moment, then finally got into Zendaya's car. The 2 cars headed towards the Atlanta Media Campus, where Megan Fox and Zendaya's film crew was located.
Want some ice cream? Ethan and Zendaya sat in the same row.
Zendaya rummaged in the small refrigerator in the car for a while, took out 2 ice cream bars, one for herself, and handed one to Ethan.
At 12:30 noon, Ethan, Zendaya, and the others arrived at the Grand Atlantic Hotel on the east side of Atlanta.
This was a 4-star hotel, and Megan Fox and Zendaya's film crew had booked out 4 floors. While going upstairs, they encountered many crew members, all of whom greeted Megan and Zendaya warmly.
Naturally, they couldn't help but glance at Ethan with curious eyes. Ethan felt nothing about this.
Having lived two lives, he could completely ignore this kind of scrutinizing gaze. What he found interesting were Megan Fox and Zendaya, or more precisely, Megan Fox. Zendaya hadn't changed much, still beautiful, still adorable.
But Megan Fox's demeanor was completely different from before, from when she was at home.
It felt like as soon as she stepped into the hotel, an air of coldness, arrogance, and authority immediately emanated from her. She walked a bit faster, with a somewhat decisive style, her long hair fluttering by her ears with each step on her pale legs, strikingly resembling a cool, aloof female CEO. Ethan guessed this was perhaps a change brought about by her status.
On the way to Atlanta, he had used his phone to look up information about the 5 women.
Currently, although all 5 were famous, their individual situations were different.
Among the 5, Jenna Ortega and Sydney Sweeney were currently artists under major talent agencies, both with their own production teams.
Olivia Cooke was initially signed with a large agency, but her contract expired at the beginning of the year.
She didn't renew and was currently independent.
Zendaya also had her own production team, affiliated with a company called Star Power Entertainment.
And Star Power Entertainment was the entertainment company founded by Megan Fox. In other words, Zendaya was actually an artist under Megan Fox.
In terms of popularity, the 5 women might not differ much, but in terms of industry status and influence, Megan Fox was clearly more powerful.
In fact, the current TV series, Crimson Wings, was invested in by Star Power Entertainment.
So Megan Fox was not only the female lead of the crew but also the investor and producer of the show.
This was also why, just now, when the staff greeted Megan Fox, besides enthusiasm, there was also a hint of reverence.
After all, she wasn't just a beautiful female star, but also a beautiful boss. Megan Fox and Zendaya's rooms were on the 8th floor, adjacent to each other.
Megan was in room 8808, Zendaya in room 8806.
As for Ethan's room, Megan had arranged it beforehand, right opposite them, room 8807.
Ethan went to his room to rest for a bit.
Zendaya then came to knock on his door, calling Ethan downstairs for lunch.
After the meal, Ethan said to Megan and Zendaya, "I'm planning to go out for a walk later. This is my first time in Atlanta." Megan nodded.
Although they wanted to keep Ethan with them, it wasn't about tying him down, always keeping him by their side.
"Do you want us to go with you?" Ethan shook his head. "No need. You've been in the car all morning. You should rest." "I'll be fine on my own." Megan said, "Okay, then be careful. Call us if anything happens. Oh, and if you run into reporters, you don't need to pay attention to them." Megan and Zendaya then went upstairs. Ethan left the hotel, didn't take a taxi, and walked towards the Atlanta Media Campus.
The Atlanta Media Campus was already very famous in his previous life. In this world, it had also long been renowned. In his previous life, there were many short videos about this place. Someone once calculated that the number of extras playing zombies who died at the campus each year could circle the Earth 3 times. There was even a story about a World War II veteran who came to a filming location to commemorate his fallen comrades, asking a tour guide to take him to the place where the most World War II soldiers had died. The tour guide ended up taking him to the Atlanta Media Campus, famous for its war film sets. From these short videos, it wasn't hard to see how popular war films shot at the campus were. Of course, this place didn't only have war films, many types of TV series and movies were shot here. It was said that over 1,000 TV series and movies were filmed here each year, but Ethan didn't know the actual situation. The Atlanta Media Campus was huge. If one were to walk through all of it, it would probably take 4 or 5 days. Ethan didn't wander for too long, just strolled around the ancient kingdom set, and even took photos with a few female tourists. The female tourists didn't recognize Ethan, just thought he was handsome and assumed he was a celebrity. Ethan didn't expose them, playing along with the female tourists, pretending to be a star. Leaving the media campus, Ethan walked into downtown Atlanta. Downtown Atlanta was very bustling. It was hard to imagine that just a few decades ago, this was an ordinary town. It could be said that the film and television industry had entirely driven the city's development. Ethan found a Barnes & Noble and went straight to the cookbook section. After a night's rest, his mental energy had recovered, and he could continue learning skill books.
Ethan was very curious to know what a higher-level cooking skill would feel like. Ding! Learn skill book The Imperial Banquet, gained 45 experience points. Ding! Learn skill book Essence of America's 8 Great Cuisines, gained 42 experience points. Ding! Learn skill book The Art of Baking. Ethan took cookbooks from the shelf one by one, learning them. This time, his learning speed was a bit slower, always paying attention to his own condition. He didn't want to pass out again. Last time it was in his own bed, which was fine. This time, if he collapsed in the middle of a bookstore, it would be a real joke. When he took down the 7th book and finished learning it, his cooking skill leveled up once again. Almighty System Host, Ethan Miller Skills, Cooking, Culinary Grandmaster, 11/10,000. You have become a chef with extraordinary skills, capable of creating any delicacy in the world. This level up was a bit different from before. No new experiences or memories flooded his mind, only an additional, indescribable, mystical feeling. This feeling was called passion. Previously, when Ethan's cooking skill reached peak level, he already had some affection for cooking. But affection and passion were clearly different. Affection was simply liking it, considering it a hobby. Passion, on the other hand, meant being able to invest everything, pursue it for a lifetime, and dedicate everything. It was precisely this moment when a passion for cooking arose in his heart that allowed Ethan's cooking skill to achieve sublimation. When a skill reaches a certain realm, mere hard work is no longer enough to improve it. What can truly elevate it is the state of mind. This might sound a bit mystical, but the principle is actually very simple. It applies to any profession, any skill. For example, if you don't like playing soccer, under coercion and diligent practice, you might achieve some success, but ultimately, it's difficult to reach the pinnacle. But those who can truly reach the pinnacle, deep down, will definitely have an extraordinary love for the ball. The same applies to other professions. Ethan stood before the bookshelf, closing his eyes to carefully feel the change in his state of mind, then looked at the system panel. Seeing the 10,000 experience points after the cooking skill, he involuntarily pursed his lips, feeling a bit helpless. This was truly a bit excessive. Although he really wanted to know what the realm after Culinary Grandmaster would be like, in the short term, he definitely couldn't complete the upgrade. Even if he exhausted his mental energy, it wouldn't be enough. He could only take it slow in the future. Ethan left the cookbook section and went to the skincare and beauty section. He felt his mental energy was still okay. Since he had been out for a while, he should learn a bit more. Beauty and figure were unlike cooking, they didn't have levels but existed as attribute points, and the system panel didn't display them. So Ethan didn't know what level his initial beauty and figure were at, let alone what level they would reach after learning skill books. Fortunately, he wasn't too fixated on this aspect. He would just go by feel, learning a bit more within the limits of his mental endurance. When he learned the 17th book in the skincare and beauty section, he couldn't help but yawn, feeling a bit sleepy and tired. He knew he was about to reach his limit, so he turned and left the bookstore. He wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but on his way out of the bookstore, many eyes were drawn to him, both male and female, with women naturally being the majority. Ethan wondered if his looks had improved again. There were no mirrors around, so he didn't know what he looked like now, but as long as he wasn't disfigured, it was fine. Anyway, he never intended to rely on his looks to make a living. It was very hot outside, the sun hanging high, the scorching heat making it hard to find shade, and annoyingly, there wasn't a hint of breeze. Atlanta in June had fully entered its sweltering season. Ethan walked along the shade of the trees, passing by a beverage shop, and went in to buy an ice cream. During this process, he finally confirmed that his looks had definitely improved again. Because he was not only pulled aside by several girls for photos but also asked for his social media. While taking photos, one of the girls even held his arm tightly, using her softness to express a deeper meaning. Ethan estimated that if he suggested getting a room, some of the girls in front of him would definitely go with him. This made him feel a bit novel. So this was what it felt like to be a handsome guy? Indeed, being handsome meant you could do whatever you wanted. There was a famous saying in his previous life, if you're handsome enough, even a lemon seed can make you drunk. If you're ugly, 1,000 cups won't make you fall. Ethan ultimately didn't develop any further relationships with the girls. Under their lingering gazes, he turned and left. After all, he was a married man. Given his current situation, a fling was tantamount to crossing the line. If the media found out, he would be fine, but for Megan Fox and the others, it would be absolute trouble. Since he had taken their money, he couldn't cause them problems. After finishing his ice cream, Ethan went into an electronics store and bought a microwave, a wok, and a bunch of other kitchen utensils. He was now like a master swordsman with superb swordsmanship, and the kitchen utensils were equivalent to the sword in his hand. A master swordsman would get antsy if he didn't practice his sword, he would get antsy if he didn't cook. Perhaps this was the price of skill sublimation. Once you're passionate, you're truly passionate. Of course, this wasn't a bad thing. Moreover, Ethan had other intentions. During lunch earlier, Ethan had asked Megan Fox and Zendaya. Basically, when they were on set, they all ate set meals, meaning boxed lunches. Back at the hotel, they would occasionally cook themselves, but most of the time, they ate takeout. Ethan felt that since he was receiving $100,000 a month in salary from them, he should make an effort to repay them accordingly, otherwise, he would feel guilty taking the money. So he decided to take over the two women's meals during this period. He believed that with his skills, at $100,000 a month, they wouldn't be at a loss. Carrying a pile of kitchen utensils, Ethan walked towards the hotel where the film crew was staying. The hotel was quite far from the city center, about 5 or 6 miles. Plus, it was hot, and he was carrying a bunch of kitchen supplies. Ethan was soon sweating profusely, panting, his steps heavy. This weak reaction made him feel a sense of urgency for the first time. He felt he needed to learn skills purposefully. Other things were secondary, the most important thing was to learn a skill that could enhance his physical fitness. After all, health was the most valuable asset. Although he currently had a six-pack and V-lines, those were due to his enhanced figure. In reality, they were just for show, good-looking but not functional. After walking for over half an hour, Ethan finally returned to the hotel. When he reached the hotel courtyard gate, he sat down on the roadside steps. There was a shady tree here, and Ethan wanted to rest a bit. Panting and fanning himself, the sweat on Ethan's body hadn't dried yet when the grass in front of him suddenly rustled a few times. Ethan leaned forward, curious, intending to reach out and part the grass to see what it was. Unexpectedly, before he could reach out, a pitch-black cobra suddenly raised its head from the grass. The cobra was only about a foot away from Ethan, its body reared up almost to his chest, its hood flared, and its mouth wide open, ready to strike at any moment. Ethan's entire body froze. He had lived 2 lives spanning several decades, and had only encountered harmless grass snakes as a child in the countryside. How could he have ever seen this kind of big boss? Ethan didn't dare to move, not even daring to call for help, afraid of agitating the big boss in front of him and getting bitten. Although he hadn't studied snakes much, he knew that cobras were a top-tier venomous snake, extremely potent. One person and one snake remained in a standoff. More than 10 minutes passed, the cobra showed no intention of leaving, and Ethan naturally didn't dare to move. Just then, a short man wearing sunglasses walked out of the hotel. The man saw Ethan, motionless as a statue from a distance, his eyes darting around. As he got closer, he seemingly couldn't suppress his curiosity. Ethan's posture was indeed too strange, motionless, making people wonder. The man walked over and sat down next to Ethan. "Hey buddy, what are you looking at so intently?" The man's words suddenly stopped, his posture completely frozen. The ink-black cobra had moved a few inches closer to the two of them. The standoff, from one person and one snake, had become 2 people and 1 snake. "Hey, buddy, you're not training snakes, are you? Stop kidding around." The man swallowed hard, whispering to Ethan. Ethan didn't dare turn his head, also whispering, "It's more like it's training me." "Boss, you're stepping on my foot. I don't dare move." "It won't really bite, will it?" "You can try. I think it's just bluffing. If you scare it, maybe it'll run away." The man didn't try, just glanced at Ethan with a resentful look. Time passed slowly. Ethan and the man became like waiting statues. During this time, cars entered and exited the hotel gate, and some people were curious about them. But people's curiosity didn't seem as intense as the short man's.
At most, they just glanced a few times, no one approached.
Until.
Zendaya leaned against the front window, her small head peeking out, looking this way with a strange expression.
Megan, look, isn't that Ethan? Next to him seems to be Paul Rudd.
Zendaya beckoned to Megan Fox, who was sitting on the bed behind her. Megan put down her script, her bare, pale feet padding over to the window.
She glanced out and said, "It's them." How do those two know each other?
This hotel wasn't just housing their Crimson Wings crew, another film crew had booked out the remaining floors.
And the acclaimed actor Paul Rudd was the male lead of that other crew.
Megan and Zendaya both knew this, they had even had dinner with Paul Rudd before.
Though not extremely close, they could be considered acquaintances.
Zendaya propped her elbows on the windowsill, cupping her pretty face in her hands a little, and said, "This guy definitely has a secret, quite possibly a huge, unknown secret."
Megan lightly pinched Zendaya's curvy backside, annoyed. "You're the one with a huge secret." Zendaya giggled. "I said a big secret, not a big booty, sis. Why are you playing along?" Megan shot Zendaya a look, returned to the bed, and sat cross-legged. "Stop being so nosy. Who doesn't have secrets? Besides, what do other people's secrets have to do with you?" Zendaya said, "What do you mean, how is it not related?" "He's my husband." Megan said, "A husband you'll divorce in a year." Hearing this, Zendaya's beautiful face suddenly looked forlorn. She sighed. "It's really bad luck. I mean, I didn't do anything, and suddenly I'm a divorced woman." "Megan, if we date and get married in the future, do you think our partners will mind this?" Megan snorted. "It's not like you can't find a man.
Anyone who minds this is clearly narrow-minded and not worth marrying." Zendaya nodded, her heart full of worries, then turned her head again, bored, continuing to watch Ethan and Paul Rudd in the distance.
10 minutes later. Megan, come quick." "What's wrong?" "Come quick." Zendaya jumped up and down, beckoning.
Megan walked to the window, her beautiful face immediately showing a hint of surprise.
"Why were those two still sitting there?" "They've just been sitting there like that?" Megan asked. Zendaya nodded seriously. "The whole time. I've been staring. They haven't moved an inch, like they'd been acupunctured." Megan pondered for a moment. Let's go down and see."
The two women put on their shoes, went downstairs, and walked towards the hotel courtyard gate. Just as they got close, Megan suddenly pulled Zendaya back with one hand.
"What's?"
"Shoo." Megan widened her eyes, cutting Zendaya off, then pointed at the cobra in front of Ethan and Paul Rudd. Zendaya gasped, quickly covering her mouth with both hands.
Snakes are creatures that seem to inherently evoke fear in humans.
Although, compared to other creatures, they aren't particularly ferocious. In the list of creatures humans dislike or fear, snakes are definitely in the top ranks.
Perhaps it's due to their unappealing appearance. Between the two women, Megan was calmer.
Zendaya was the most afraid of this kind of thing. Managing not to scream was a testament to her restraint, entirely due to her concern for Ethan and Paul Rudd's safety.
Let's go get help." Megan was relatively calm, pulling Zendaya back. She knew that in this situation, two women like herself and Zendaya definitely couldn't handle it.
This matter wasn't huge, but it wasn't small either.
It was just a snake, seemingly nothing. But if the snake bit Ethan and Paul Rudd, it could potentially be fatal. How could a matter concerning human lives be considered small?
The two women's ability to rally people at the hotel was undeniable. Everyone in the hotel knew them. As soon as they spoke, the entire hotel was in an uproar.
Staff from both film crews, hotel staff, a large crowd ran out shouting.
This made Ethan and Paul Rudd frown repeatedly, afraid this crowd would startle the cobra in front of them.
"Oh my God, where did this monster come from? Is this a cobra or a king cobra? Is there a difference? King cobras are more powerful.
One bite and you're dead in seconds." Quite a few people came, all looking anxious, but in reality, they couldn't help much, just stood around at a distance, chattering, no one daring to approach. It wasn't that everyone was a coward, the situation was genuinely a bit tricky.
The cobra was too close to Ethan and Paul Rudd, no one could guarantee they wouldn't be bitten. And if they were bitten, who would be responsible? A group of people discussed for a long time, finally deciding to call the police and ask the professional fire department to handle it. Do you think this snake is crazy? It doesn't leave, doesn't bite, just stares here. Doesn't its neck hurt?
Paul Rudd and Ethan were still in the same posture, their backs to the crowd.
Paul blinked, wiping a bead of sweat from his eyebrow, and whispered to Ethan. Ethan said, "It's probably thinking the same thing. It's probably wondering, damn, are these two guys nuts? They don't attack, and they don't leave. Put."
Paul Rudd was amused, but quickly suppressed his smile, took a light breath, and maintained his posture. It was fortunate for the two of them that the Atlanta fire station was very close to the hotel.
The firefighters arrived in just over 10 minutes.
The firefighters were also very surprised by the scene before them. A quick glance revealed many familiar A-list celebrities, and one of them was even being held hostage by a snake. It had to be said, in all their years of service, this was considered the second most bizarre thing they had encountered. The top one was a guy who got a nut stuck on his private part and couldn't get it off. They would never forget that.
Professionals were indeed professionals. What was a difficult problem in everyone else's eyes was incredibly easy for the firefighters. They first asked Ethan and Paul Rudd not to move.
Then, one person held a long-handled net and scooped at the cobra, while the person behind used snake tongs to grab the cobra's head and put it into a specialized bag.
And that was it. Damn it! Oh my God!
Seeing the snake caught, Ethan and Paul Rudd simultaneously breathed a sigh of relief, then both leaned back and collapsed onto the ground. After a standoff of nearly an hour, sitting motionless, they were exhausted, feeling like their bodies weren't their own anymore. The crowd of onlookers around them finally had the courage to step forward, trying to show concern and ask about them. Of course, most people were around Paul Rudd. After all, he was a bona fide award-winning actor and the male lead of the other film crew. Although Ethan was a bit overshadowed, it wasn't too embarrassing. Though there were fewer people around him, they were all high quality. Megan Fox and Zendaya, two great beauties, one on each side. This kind of prestige wasn't something ordinary people had. Initially, some people were curious about who Ethan was, but after a closer look and a little thought, they understood, this was the lucky guy who had been married by 5 actresses. Ethan and Paul Rudd rested on the ground for a while, waited to regain some strength, and then returned to the hotel together.
Paul Rudd was staying on the 6th floor.
As they got out of the elevator, he nodded to Megan Fox and Zendaya, then smiled at Ethan.
"We've been through thick and thin together now. When I'm done showering, I'll treat you to dinner tonight. We'll have snake meat."
Ethan pointed to the pile of kitchen utensils being carried by Linda Keller and Maya Pham.
"Let me treat you. I've got all the gear." Paul Rudd nodded. "All right, see you then. Room 8807. Megan Fox, Zendaya, Linda Keller, Maya Pham, and Ethan entered the room. Linda and Maya put down the kitchen utensils and left. Megan and Zendaya stayed.
Megan was still relatively reserved.
Zendaya was much more expressive, sitting on the edge of the bed, giggling.
Although what just happened was quite dangerous, now that it was safely resolved, the more she thought about it, the funnier it seemed. If a bit of the content were put into a comedy film, it could directly become an incredibly humorous segment.
"Let me interview you. How exactly did you manage to confront a cobra like that?"
Zendaya tilted her head, blinking her large eyes, and asked Ethan with a smile.
"You should ask the cobra that." Ethan glanced at Zendaya, then rubbed his lower back. His body was still too weak. This was probably a lingering effect from his previous life, being so frail at a young age. This made Ethan even more anxious.
Tomorrow, he had to go to the bookstore and learn a skill that could improve his physical fitness.
"Stop gloating." Megan kicked Zendaya's pale leg lightly, then gestured with her chin towards the pile of kitchen utensils on the floor, and said to Ethan, "What did you buy these for?" Ethan said, "To cook, of course. During my time here, I'll take care of all 3 of your meals." Hearing this, both women's eyes lit up. Zendaya covered her mouth with her small, fair fist and said, "Really? Ethan, at this moment, you are absolutely the best man in the world."
Megan demurred, "Actually, there's no need for such trouble. The film crew and the hotel can provide 3 meals."
How can the food from the crew or hotel compare to my cooking? Ethan, with his culinary grandmaster skill, was extremely confident in this aspect. I'm going to take a shower. If you want to eat dinner a bit earlier tonight, you can take out the kitchen utensils and wash them first. Ethan took his change of clothes into the bathroom. Megan and Zendaya carried the kitchen utensils to Zendaya's room. The two took out the pots, cleaver, and other items to wash. While washing, Zendaya suddenly stopped and sighed. Megan asked strangely, "What's wrong with you?" Zendaya put down the things in her hand, turned around, her big eyes staring unblinkingly at Megan, her beautiful face full of seriousness. I feel like Ethan is a master. Huh? Megan was bewildered. What do you mean? I mean a master pickup artist. Pick up? Did he hit on you? Did he actively flirt with you? Megan asked. Zendaya shook her head. If he actively hit on me, what kind of master would that be? At most, just a guy with a lot of tricks. I say he's a master because he's too good, the slow burn type, imperceptibly making me fall into his trap. Hearing this, Megan's beautiful face inexplicably turned to astonishment. Hey girl, are you crazy? Just 2 meals and you've fallen? Is that all the self-control you have? Zendaya said miserably, but I can't control this, I don't want to either. But the truth is, I feel like I haven't done anything, and I've already been captured by him. So, you're in love with him? Zendaya thought for a moment and said, I'm not sure. Probably something like that. Megan frowned. What do you mean, something like that? How can this be, something like that? Love is love, not loving is not loving. Don't you know if you like someone or not? Zendaya looked a bit dejected, helplessly leaning against the sink, and said aggrievely, that's the problem. I admit, his cooking is delicious, and my impression of him isn't bad. But it's just a not bad impression, that's far from loving him. But, Megan, do you think he really, like they say online, put a spell on me? Megan rolled her eyes at Zendaya. Spell your demonic head. I think you're the one who looks like you've been cursed. She continued, you've got me all confused too. If you say you don't have any special feelings for him, then why are you talking about falling into a love trap, being taken captive? Zendaya said, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You've heard that saying, right? Megan paused, not understanding why Zendaya suddenly brought this up, but still nodded. Zendaya continued, that's how I figured it out. I don't know why, but when I saw him just now, I suddenly felt he was even more handsome than he was this afternoon. Isn't that beauty in the eye of the beholder? So, does that mean, subconsciously, I'm already in love with him? Megan's jaw dropped, her beautiful face a picture of bewilderment. After a moment, she turned to Zendaya and said, I thought I was the only one who felt that way. You also think he got more handsome since this afternoon? Now it was Zendaya's turn to be stunned. She said in amazement, could it be you're in love with him too? Oh my God, this isn't just a spell anymore. He must be God. This is practically a miracle, a divine sign. Megan said speechlessly, can you please not be so dramatic all the time? That's not what's happening at all. Then how do you explain the beauty in the eye of the beholder thing? Maybe we just weren't paying much attention to him before, didn't look at him closely, so we feel like he's gotten more handsome. Zendaya wagged a slender, fair finger. We already used that excuse this morning. Besides, this morning, I made a point to look at him carefully. I can swear on my reputation, he absolutely, positively got more handsome, and not because of makeup or any external factors. Megan was a bit lost for words. After a long pause, she said irritably, anyway, it's not like that. How could it be so exaggerated? It's one thing if you're boy crazy, but are both of us boy crazy? He's not actually God. Then how do you explain? There's no explanation. Megan cut Zendaya off. There are many unexplainable things in this world. Do you have to know the answer to everything? When you're in good spirits, you look prettier too. When you stay up late and your eyes are swollen, you naturally look worse. Nobody's looks are fixed and unchanging. Zendaya clearly didn't believe Megan's explanation and was about to open her mouth to refute when someone knocked on the door.
Zendaya opened it to find Ethan, the very subject of their recent discussion.
"You're done showering?" "That was fast," Zendaya said, surprised. "Fast?"
Ethan entered the room, saw the pile of kitchen utensils in the sink, and said helplessly, "I think you two are the ones who are too slow.
"Let me do it." Ethan turned on the tap and started washing the kitchenware.
Zendaya sidled up to Ethan, tilting her head and staring intently at his face.
Ethan glanced at her. "What's up? Why are you looking at me like that?" Zendaya said, "Have you noticed? You seem to have gotten even more handsome." "Really? You think so too?" Zendaya paused, then immediately asked curiously, "Who else thinks so besides me?" "The cobra." "Zendaya."
Ethan continued, "I was thinking about it later. You know, that snake and I have no beef, no reason for it to mess with me.
So there's only one possibility, that Cobra was female."
Megan, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed, chuckled. "Dude, snakes aren't male and female, they're male and female or buck and doe depending on the context, but for snakes, it's just male and female."
Ethan looked surprised, turning to Zendaya. "Is that so?" Zendaya looked a bit confused, then waved her hand after a moment. "That's not important." You're just talking nonsense, aren't you?" Ethan turned to Megan. "Are all the artists at your company this naive?"
I'm clearly joking, and she suspects I'm talking nonsense.
Megan burst out laughing. Zendaya pouted and lightly smacked Ethan's arm. Ethan had washed all the kitchenware. He wiped his hands and said to the two women, "Get out the ingredients too.
Today, I'll let you taste what art on the tip of the tongue really means."
Megan shook her head. "I only have some snacks in my room."
Zendaya probably has some, she always hoards food.
Zendaya quickly brought out her entire stash. Yogurt, frozen wontons, pastries, chocolate, various fruits, dates, rice. Ethan's eyes scanned Zendaya's stash, and he pursed his lips. "So tonight, are we really planning to eat stir-fried yogurt with dates and wonton rice medley?" Both Megan's and Zendaya's large eyes showed a look of eager curiosity and excitement. "I've never actually eaten that. Is there really such a dish?" "Of course not." Ethan's face darkened. "This stuff you have here can't even be called ingredients, okay? What can I possibly make with these? Mystery meet surprise?" Megan immediately sided with Ethan, pointing at Zendaya.
"And you call yourself a foodie?
You don't have anything useful."
Zendaya said aggrievely, "I mostly just make some late-night snacks.
I can't exactly open a farmer's market in my room." Ethan took out his phone to check the time. Fortunately, it wasn't too late, not yet 7. "Alright, I'll go out and buy some. What do you want to eat?" Zendaya's spirits immediately lifted. "I want to go too.
I haven't been to a supermarket in ages."
Ethan looked at Megan. Megan nodded. "Then let's go together." Ethan left the room and stood in the hallway waiting for the two women. Megan and Zendaya said they wanted to change clothes.
He initially thought he would have to wait a long time. After all, when it came to women changing clothes, the unit of time was usually measured in hours.
But reality was better than Ethan expected. In just over 20 minutes, the two came out.
No complaints, he genuinely felt the two women were very quick. Zendaya wore a pair of faded denim shorts and plain canvas shoes, making her pale, slender legs look even longer and more delicate. On top, she wore a cartoon t-shirt, the hem tucked into her shorts, subtly showing off her slim waist. She wore an Alail-style baseball cap and a face mask, though not fully covering her face but pulled down below her chin. Megan had changed into a white silk dress that reached her knees, paired with flat, strappy sandals. Her cute little toes were painted with pink nail polish. She also wore a hat, but a sun hat, and a face mask, pulled down below her chin like Zendaya's.
"Wow, this is so comfortable."
The three went downstairs, and Zendaya was the first to run outside. Going for a walk in the evening indeed felt great. The three decisively decided not to ask the driver and walked out of the hotel. Passing by the hotel courtyard gate, both women looked a little scared, hiding behind Ethan.
Zendaya even grabbed Ethan's arm. Ethan said, "Hey, I'm the one who was scared by the snake. Why are you two so afraid?" Zendaya was very honest. "Isn't this normal? That was a cobra, who wouldn't be scared? Weren't you scared before too?" Ethan said seriously, "I wasn't scared at all. In that situation, the cobra and I were evenly matched, just in a standoff." Megan chuckled. "Evenly matched but didn't move an inch? When we were upstairs, we thought you'd been hit by an acupuncture point." "Ha ha." Zendaya laughed heartily. Joking and chatting along the way, the three entered the Valley Foods supermarket not far from the hotel. Since they had agreed earlier that the two women would buy whatever they wanted to eat, Ethan took on the task of pushing the shopping cart, letting the two women choose the ingredients. The two women really did choose, quickly filling up a cart with chicken, duck, vegetables, whatever they came across, they wanted to pick out. "All right, you two Amazons, that's enough. We're just making dinner, not preparing for a refugee crisis. We've bought too much." Seeing that the two women had no intention of stopping and seemed poised to clear out the supermarket shelves, Ethan quickly spoke up to dissuade them. Megan and Zendaya were amused by Ethan's Amazon's comment. Zendaya added, "We have a fridge in our room. We can store whatever we don't finish." Ethan said, "Food stored in the fridge isn't as fresh. Anyway, we're close to the supermarket. We can buy whatever we want to eat anytime." The two women were still a bit unsatisfied but felt Ethan's words made sense, so they relented. After paying at the checkout, the three of them carried two large plastic bags out of the supermarket. Ethan was in the middle, carrying one bag in each hand. The two women were on either side, each holding one side of the plastic bags. Night had fallen by now, and the street lights along the road were all lit. The three of them carried their bags, strolling leisurely down the road, their shadows elongated by the streetlights. It had to be said, it was quite heartwarming. Back in the hotel room, Ethan cleared the items from the desk in his room, spread a plastic tablecloth over it, and then arranged the kitchen utensils one by one. As he was about to start, Megan suddenly remembered something. "Oh right, didn't you say you wanted to treat Paul Rudd to dinner?" Ethan rubbed his hands. "I almost forgot if you hadn't mentioned it. Which room is he in on the 6th floor?" Zendaya, full of energy, stood up. "I know, I'll go get him." Zendaya, like a nimble white fawn, quickly darted out the door. Only Ethan and Megan were left in the room. Ethan focused on cooking. Megan sat on the bed, twirling the sun hat in her hands, feeling a bit bored. She stood up and walked behind Ethan, intending to ask if he needed any help. Before she could even open her mouth, Ethan suddenly turned around, his right elbow precisely and unerringly bumping into one of Megan's soft breasts. MMPH. Megan let out a soft grunt, then immediately took 2 steps back, her beautiful face flushed red, her eyes wide as she stared at Ethan. Ethan was quite embarrassed, silently marveling at Megan's size while explaining, I wanted to get the ginger. I didn't see you behind me. Sorry." Megan shot Ethan a glare, didn't reply, just squatted down, found the ginger they had just bought in the plastic bag, and threw it aggressively at Ethan. Unfortunately, Ethan caught it easily. Zendaya returned shortly, followed by Paul Rudd, dressed in a comfortable, homey outfit. "Mr. Rudd." Megan stood up to greet Paul Rudd. Ethan also nodded at him. Speaking of which, although Paul Rudd was considerably older than Megan and an award-winning actor himself, technically, he hadn't been in the industry as long as Megan. From that perspective, he should be considered Megan's junior. Because Megan was a child star, she had been on screen since she was 3. Paul Rudd, on the other hand, didn't get his first significant role until he was nearly 30. His acting career hadn't been smooth initially, he was a late bloomer. Paul Rudd wasn't famous for his looks or physique. Objectively speaking, his appearance and build were somewhat unremarkable, just average even among ordinary people. But his acting was superb, and his EQ was high. Despite his less than stellar physical attributes, he had carved out a path for himself in the entertainment industry. Not only had he won various prestigious awards and achieved fame, but he also had excellent relationships within the industry. Paul Rudd, Megan, and Zendaya had known each other for a while.
With Ethan, they had shared a harrowing experience, so he wasn't formal or reserved upon entering the room.
He walked over to Ethan with his hands behind his back, took a look, and said, "Wow, this is quite a spread. I thought we were just having some noodles or something. Looks like we're having a feast tonight. Need any help?" Ethan said, "Do you know how to cook?" "Sure, but I'm just an amateur." "That's great. Then you can read out our supermarket receipt."
Paul Rudd was amused, turned around, sat on a chair, and joked, "I'm easygoing about everything, except when it comes to money." Zendaya, curious, said from the side, "Mr. Rudd, tell us about what happened this afternoon."
I asked Ethan, but he wouldn't tell me.
Paul Rudd waved his hand.
"Don't even mention it. I was so unlucky.
I was just going out to buy something, and I saw him sitting motionlessly by the roadside. I was too curious, went over to ask what he was looking at, and before I could even finish speaking, that snake targeted me too."
Ha ha.
Zendaya seemed to have imagined the scene and sat on the bed, laughing foolishly. Paul Rudd continued, "It was really intense at that moment, the snake was very close to both of us.
Then I asked him, 'This snake won't really bite, will it?' And he told me, 'You can try. I think it's just bluffing. If you scare it, maybe it'll run away.'" Ha 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 ha. This time, not only Zendaya but Megan also burst out laughing, turning to smack Ethan. "How can you be so mischievous?"
Paul Rudd said, "He is mischievous.
Luckily, I'm quick-witted. If it had been someone more gullible, they'd probably be stiff as a board by now." Ha ha. The three of them joked boisterously, but Ethan didn't participate.
As a culinary grandmaster, cooking wasn't just cooking for him, it was an act of creation. The change in his mindset meant that once he stood before the stove, he immediately entered a state of extreme focus and concentration.
This was perhaps the difference between a peak-level chef and a grandmaster-level chef. In terms of experience and skill, the two weren't vastly different.
The real difference lay in whether they put their heart into it, and how much heart they put into it. There was a line in God of Cookery, "As long as you put your heart into it, everyone can be a god of cookery."
This saying actually holds a lot of truth. Ethan's concentration gradually affected Paul Rudd and the two women as well.
They unconsciously lowered their voices, eventually stopping talking altogether, afraid of disturbing Ethan. It was as if they weren't watching a man cook, but a grandmaster performing an art form on stage. Before long, several dishes were ready one after another, and the rice was also cooked.
Paul Rudd, Megan, and Zendaya finally snapped out of their daze.
Paul Rudd exclaimed, "I've lived this long, and this is the first time I've felt that cooking can be so captivating." Zendaya nodded vigorously beside him, deeply agreeing. Megan rested her chin on her hand, looking at Ethan with a somewhat strange gaze. This man, just as Zendaya had said, exuded an air of mystery from head to toe. There weren't enough chairs in the room, so Megan and Zendaya sat on the bed, with Ethan and Paul Rudd sitting opposite them. The four of them didn't say much, picking up their chopsticks and starting to eat.
"Wow, this is so delicious.
This fish is amazing, so fresh, not a hint of fishiness.
This tofu is also delicious." Megan, Zendaya, and Paul Rudd ate and exclaimed. Ethan smiled, feeling very satisfied. For a culinary master, the happiest thing was for their creations to be recognized by diners. The meal went quickly.
Soon, the food on the table was wiped clean.
Megan, Zendaya, and Paul Rudd all ate a lot. Megan ate 1.5 bowls, Zendaya ate 2 bowls. For those who maintained a strict diet year-round like them, this was a lot.
Paul Rudd didn't need to diet, downing 4 bowls of rice in one go, eating until he burped.
"I can't, I'm stuffed. Oh my god, if this continues, I'm probably going to get fat as a pig."
"Ethan, don't make it so delicious next time.
I have to maintain my figure." Megan and Zendaya ate with great satisfaction and happiness, but soon became worried. Enjoying gourmet food was wonderful, but they were afraid of gaining weight. Women care about their figures to an extent unimaginable to men.
The more beautiful the woman, the more so.
Megan and Zendaya were naturally beautiful, top-tier beauties at that.
They naturally paid special attention to their figures, not to mention they were celebrities.
Maintaining their figure, for them, wasn't just about liking beauty, it was even a kind of professionalism. But now, they faced a happy dilemma: agonizingly torn. There was clearly a chef by their side, allowing them to eat delicious food every day, but they couldn't eat much. This was truly a kind of torture. The scariest thing was, they found they had little resistance to Ethan's cooking. If this continued, they were afraid they would really be fattened up by Ethan like two little white pigs. Don't worry, I deliberately used less oil and salt when I cooked. Although you ate a lot, the calorie intake isn't actually that high. As long as you maintain proper exercise, you won't get fat, Ethan comforted. Megan's and Zendaya's beautiful faces showed looks of extreme surprise and joy. Really? Of course, it's true. Wow, Ethan, you're amazing. The two women were overjoyed. This was perhaps the legendary having your cake and eating it too, being able to eat delicious food to their heart's content without worrying about getting fat. This was probably what all women in the world yearn for. But don't forget proper exercise. Don't sit for long after meals, don't be lazy. Go wash the dishes, burn some calories, Ethan added. Leave it to us. The two women happily stood up, cheerfully clearing the dishes to wash. Paul Rudd sat on a chair with his legs crossed. He was a character actor, his requirements for physical appearance weren't high, as long as he didn't get so fat he became unrecognizable. Impressive, you really know how to sweet-talk them. Paul Rudd quietly gave Ethan a thumbs up. Ethan said, don't slander me. Who's sweet-talking? Paul Rudd chuckled, leaned in closer, and said, don't worry, I won't sell you out. But your explanation is too fake. How can it be so delicious with less oil and salt? I know how to cook too. Ethan glanced at Paul Rudd. Who says less oil and salt can't make delicious food? As long as you utilize the natural flavors of the ingredients, you can still make gourmet food with less oil and salt. Young man, don't use your amateur knowledge to question a professional culinary grandmaster. Paul Rudd pushed Ethan lightly, laughing. In your dreams. I'm 35 this year. How old are you, kid? And you call me a young man. Ethan said, what does this prove other than you're older? I have 5 wives. Do you? Paul Rudd was speechless, then gave another thumbs up. I concede on this one. Megan and Zendaya returned after washing the dishes. Ethan stood up, took out the new tea he had bought at the supermarket today, brewed a pot for the 3 of them and himself, opened the window, turned off the main light, and turned on the wall lamp. In an instant, the night breeze blew in, and the summer insects chirped. After a satisfying meal, quietly enjoying the night, drinking a cup of tea, this feeling was incredibly pleasant. I've discovered that even though we're in the same hotel, your life is way too enjoyable. Paul Rudd sipped his tea and said to Ethan and the two women. Zendaya leaned against the headboard, her delicate legs crossed, her snow-white feet gently swaying, holding her teacup and smiling foolishly. Megan sat next to Zendaya, first giving Ethan a deep look, then said, this is also the first time I've realized that time can pass like this. Actually, when you think about it, whether life is happy or not doesn't depend on how much you have, but whether you can discover the small, beautiful things in life. Paul Rudd nodded in agreement. Well said. Perhaps this is the essence of life. Megan lightly kicked Ethan's thigh with her small foot. What do you think? Ethan said, well said. Megan shot Ethan a look. Why do I feel like you're just humoring me? Zendaya sat up, crossing her pale legs, and said with a sincere expression, I think, ultimately, it's still thanks to Ethan. The reason we can enjoy ourselves like this now is mainly because we had a delicious meal. If we hadn't eaten well tonight, even if we were still drinking tea and enjoying the breeze now, the feeling wouldn't be nearly as good. Paul Rudd laughed heartily and said to Zendaya, Zendaya makes a good point too. Megan said, I feel like it's more like flattery. Zendaya reached out and lightly pinched Megan's waist. The two of them laughed and played around. After sitting for a while longer, Paul Rudd finished his tea. Seeing that it was getting late, he stood up to leave. Before leaving, he said to Ethan with great embarrassment, Ethan, we've really been through thick and thin together. It's not an exaggeration to say we've faced life and death together. Let's consider ourselves brothers. Ethan shook his head solemnly. No way. We've only known each other for half a day. Don't think I'm a casual person just because I married 5 wives. Put. Ha 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 ha. Megan and Zendaya were overcome with laughter.
Paul Rudd laughed and lightly punched Ethan's shoulder.
It's no use.
I don't care if you're a casual person or not.
Anyway, I already consider us brothers.
Ethan shrugged with a smile.
And then? Paul Rudd said, since you've admitted we're brothers, then I won't be polite. When are you guys cooking again? Adding one more brother won't tire you out too much, right? Ethan said, you'll have to ask Megan and Zendaya about that. I'm currently their temporary employee.
Megan said generously, Mr. Rudd, feel free to join us for meals from now on.
Zendaya also said, Ethan said he'll cook all 3 of our meals every day. Great, it's a happy decision. See you later, sisters-in-law.
Paul Rudd waved his hand and left the room, satisfied.
Megan and Zendaya didn't leave.
After Paul Rudd left, they took over Paul Rudd's spot on the bed and stayed until past 10 before returning to their rooms.
The second day was another beautiful, sunny day. Ethan woke up at 5.
Today, Megan and Zendaya had to go to the film set, so he had to prepare breakfast for them early. Fighting off drowsiness, he made 2 small steamers of shrimp dumplings, boiled 3 eggs, and mixed a plate of vegetable salad.
After finishing breakfast, Ethan went to the room opposite and knocked on the door. Megan and Zendaya were already up and washing their faces. Ethan informed them that breakfast was ready.
Then he took out his phone, intending to call Paul Rudd. Before he could make the call, he saw Paul Rudd's figure approaching from the other end of the hallway.
I'm not late, am I?
Paul Rudd walked up, smiling.
Ethan nodded and smiled. Just in time.
The 2 women and Paul Rudd entered Ethan's room for breakfast, which naturally led to another round of satisfied exclamations.
Simple white congee could be cooked to such fragrance, and those translucent, glistening shrimp dumplings were even more indescribably delicious. The 3 of them didn't leave a single piece, eating everything clean.
After eating, Megan and Zendaya, as usual, cleared the dishes. Paul Rudd didn't sit idle this time either, helping Ethan pack up the kitchen utensils, preparing to take them to the film set later. The film set was some distance from the hotel. The actors couldn't possibly return to the hotel for meals, so Ethan had to go to the set to cook for the 2 women.
At 7:30 in the morning, Ethan went downstairs with Megan and Zendaya.
The 2 women's nanny vans were already waiting downstairs. Ethan put the kitchen utensils in Megan's car but didn't get in himself. Seeing this, Megan suddenly felt an uncontrollable surge of irritation.
Isn't riding in my car the same? Do you have to ride in Zendaya's car?
Ethan was stunned by her words, then shook his head.
You guys go ahead. I have something to do. The annoyance in Megan's heart instantly vanished, leaving even herself a bit bewildered. What is it? Going to buy a few things. Megan said, then just take my car.
Tell the driver where you want to go, he knows the roads in Atlanta very well. I can take Zendaya's car to the set.
Ethan shook his head. No need. It's not far anyway. I can just walk a few steps. You guys go quickly. Megan hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. All right then. Call me if anything happens. Megan's nanny van left first. Zendaya's nanny van drove up from behind but didn't go far, stopping in front of Ethan.
The electric car door slowly opened.
Zendaya said, get in. Ethan repeated his earlier excuse.
Zendaya's reaction was no different from Megan's. First, she offered to have Ethan take her car, and after Ethan declined, she told him to call her if anything came up.
As he watched Zendaya's car drive out of the hotel courtyard gate, another SUV pulled up in front of Ethan.
Paul Rudd rolled down the window, his expression a mix of curiosity and nosiness.
What's up? You guys fighting? Everything seemed fine just a minute ago. Ethan shot Paul Rudd a look, didn't answer, and turned to walk away. Paul Rudd's car idled slowly beside Ethan.
Paul leaned his arm on the car window.
Kid, you got some serious attitude. I'm a bona fide movie star talking to you, and that's how you act? Hey, where are you headed? I'll give you a lift. Got something fun planned? Don't hold out on your buddy, that's not cool.
Ethan still didn't answer, staring straight ahead, and casually flipped Paul Rudd the bird.
Downtown. Ethan walked straight to Barnes & Noble. It was just past 8, and the bookstore had just opened. There wasn't a single customer inside, only employees sweeping and cleaning. Ethan was here, of course, to learn skills. Yesterday's incident had made him acutely aware of his poor physical condition, so young, yet his body was so weak. He figured he was probably in a sub-healthy state, which was actually common for many young people nowadays. Lack of physical activity, no knowledge of proper exercise, spending every day cooped up at home glued to a computer, it would be strange if their bodies were in good shape. Ethan didn't want to become incredibly formidable, he just wanted to maintain good health. As someone who had died once, he clearly valued his health far more than his peers. Walking to the health and wellness section, Ethan scanned the shelves before pulling down a book. Ding! Skill book, The Yellow Emperor's Classic of Medicine, detected. Learn? Ethan had, of course, heard of the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Medicine. Legend had it that this book was left behind by the Yellow Emperor himself. In some novels, this book possessed heaven-defying power, incredibly renowned. Ethan was now extremely curious. What skill would he gain after learning the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Medicine? It wasn't going to give him some kind of dual cultivation technique, was it? In many novels, the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Medicine was cultivated that way. Besides, the Yellow Emperor was a legendary big shot who bedded 3,000 women and ascended in a single night. Learn. Ding. Learn skill book, The Yellow Emperor's Classic of Medicine, acquired skill, medicine. Almighty System host, Ethan Miller. Skills, cooking, culinary grandmaster, 11/10,000. You have become a chef with extraordinary skills, capable of creating any delicacy in the world. Medicine, beginner, 0/50. You have become a third-rate doctor, capable of treating some simple illnesses. Unfamiliar memories and experiences flooded his mind, meridians, acupuncture points, prescriptions, acupuncture and massage. Just like when he acquired the cooking skill, in an instant, Ethan had gained a new skill. Only, it was a bit different from what he expected. It turned out the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Medicine wasn't that magical, at least not the copy in his hand. No bedding 3,000 women and ascending in a single night, it was just a medical textbook. Moreover, what he wanted was a skill that could directly enhance his physical fitness. This medicine skill could indirectly meet his requirements. Although doctors don't treat themselves, highly skilled doctors were all experts in health preservation. Relying on health preservation knowledge, he could also slowly recuperate his body. It would just take a very long time, requiring persistent effort year-round, and many years of persistence to see results. But Ethan wanted something that could show results in the short term. Finally, Ethan made another discovery: skills and skills weren't entirely the same. Although it said every profession produces its own masters, there was clearly a hierarchy. When cooking was at beginner level, the experience points needed for an upgrade were 10. But the experience points needed to upgrade beginner medicine were 50. This also showed the difference in difficulty. This was understandable. Most women knew basic cooking, it was just a matter of skill level. It was common for children to learn cooking from their mothers. Some people even dared to practice in the kitchen with just a cookbook. But medicine was clearly not that simple. You didn't see anyone daring to perform surgery after picking up a few tips from family members. Bad cooking at worst gets thrown out, bad medicine could lead to fatalities. Placing the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Medicine back on the shelf, Ethan searched the bookstore. Medicine certainly had many uses, but today he still wanted to learn a skill that could enhance his physical fitness in the short term. He could upgrade medicine later when he had time, there was no rush. After walking around, Ethan stopped in front of a bookshelf. This section sold martial arts books. Ding! Skill book Tai Chi Chuan detected. Learn? Learn. Ding. Learn skill book Tai Chi Chuan, acquired skill, grappling. Grappling, beginner, 0/20. You have become a third-rate grappling competitor, you possess some grappling techniques. Ethan placed the Tai Chi Chuan book back on the shelf and pondered. Things were again a bit different from what he thought. Martial arts books helped him learn the grappling skill. Grappling helped him understand many techniques for applying force and generating power,
but they were just techniques, offering no help in enhancing physical fitness. For him now, this skill was somewhat useless because while technique was important, it still relied on strong physical conditioning. A weakling who couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag, no matter how superb his technique, would be useless. Others could knock you down with one punch, your technique would be unusable. This was perhaps like the saying youth and strength often trump skill. The so-called a wild flurry can overwhelm an old master. No matter how skilled you were, when you grew old and weak, you had to make way for the younger generation. The power of technique, ultimately, had to be built on a foundation of strong physical fitness.
Can physical fitness only be improved through health preservation and regular training? Ethan thought to himself.
Young man, I've seen you pacing around for a while now.
What kind of book are you looking for? Tell me, and I'll help you find it. A middle-aged female employee from the bookstore walked over and asked Ethan gently.
This employee had been observing Ethan for over half an hour, not because she thought Ethan was a thief trying to steal books, but because she found Ethan too handsome. Everyone appreciates beauty, and this middle-aged woman was also a little flustered. Though she didn't dare to think too much, she couldn't help but approach and ask. Just like old men also enjoy chatting with pretty young girls. Don't assume that fantasies and flutters for the opposite sex only exist among the young.
Are there any books that can cultivate internal energy? Ethan asked the employee.
He felt that internal energy might be the most suitable thing to quickly enhance physical fitness. Of course, he was just asking casually.
He didn't hold much hope.
From learning Tai Chi Chuan, he had gained some understanding of martial arts. The internal energy depicted in movies and novels seemed not to exist in the real world. Tai Chi Chuan was a form of grappling. Its essence was the application of force and generation of power. Practiced well, with sufficient physical conditioning, it indeed had some power.
But its power was limited. It could defeat a few untrained strongmen.
By relying on movement, terrain, and playing cat and mouse, defeating 10 or 20 people wasn't impossible.
But that was pretty much the limit.
To rely on this kind of martial art or grappling to become a master like those in movies and novels was basically a fantasy. No matter how well martial arts were practiced, one couldn't fly over rooftops, leap over 10-meter-high city walls, or injure people from a distance with a single palm strike.
The employee's reaction was not unexpected. After hearing Ethan, she immediately looked bewildered. Internal energy?
The employee covered her mouth and chuckled.
Are you teasing me, kid? That stuff doesn't exist, it's all a scam. You absolutely shouldn't believe it, and don't try to practice it yourself. What if you injure yourself?
She was very enthusiastic, very concerned, but Ethan was in no mood to appreciate it, though she was still quite charming. He just smiled and nodded at the employee, then turned and walked towards the health and wellness section. Since there was no way to directly acquire a skill to enhance physical fitness, he could only use conventional methods.
First, upgrade medicine, rely on health preservation, and persist in daily training. The effect probably wouldn't be too bad.
After all, he was only 20, still very young. His poor physical condition was just due to bad lifestyle habits. With more care and attention, his physical fitness would definitely improve.
Hey, handsome young man, wait a minute. Seeing Ethan about to leave, the employee unconsciously called him back. Ethan turned around. The employee aimed a few times and then said, "Ah.
I suggest you take a look at some Taoist classics."
Aren't those martial arts things on TV related to this stuff?
I remember that Nining Manual was summarized from Taoist classics.